8-year-old Emma Matthews had been counting down the days on her bedroom calendar with bright red markers. Each X brought her closer to the most exciting day of her young life: a trip to London to see the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. Her small bedroom in Manchester was decorated like a miniature military museum, with pictures of soldiers in their magnificent red uniforms and towering black bearskin hats covering every available wall space. Emma was born with spina bifida, a condition that affected her spine and meant she had used a wheelchair for as long as she could remember. But her physical challenges had never dimmed the brightness of her spirit or the size of her dreams. While other children her age dreamed of becoming pop stars or football players, Emma's heart belonged to the military. She wanted nothing more than to serve her country, just like her beloved grandfather had done decades before. Her grandfather, William Matthews, had been Emma's hero and inspiration since she was old enough to understand his stories. Every Sunday, when he visited, he would sit beside her wheelchair and tell her tales of his time serving in the British Army. During the 1960s and 70s, his eyes would light up as he described the pride he felt wearing his uniform, the brotherhood among soldiers, and the honor of serving something greater than himself. Emma would listen with wide eyes, hanging on every word, asking countless questions about military life, ceremonies, and traditions. William had recognized something special in his granddaughter from an early age, despite her physical limitations. Emma possessed a strength of character and determination that impressed everyone who met her. She never complained about her condition or felt sorry for herself. Instead, she focused on what she could do rather than what she couldn't. Her grandfather often said that Emma had the heart of a true soldier, and he meant every word. The idea for the London trip had come from William himself. During one of their Sunday visits, he had noticed Emma studying a book about British Royal Guards with intense concentration. She was memorizing details about their uniforms, their duties, and the precise movements of the changing of the guard ceremony. When he asked her what fascinated her so much about the guards, Emma's response had brought tears to his eyes. "Grandpa," she had said with the serious tone that only an 8-year-old can manage, "they look so proud and important. They protect something special, just like you did. I want to see them, and maybe they'll see that I understand what they do." Her innocence and genuine respect for military service had moved William so deeply that he immediately began planning a way to make her dream come true. William spoke with Emma's parents, David and Sarah Matthews, about organizing a special family trip to London. David worked as an accountant, and Sarah was a part-time nurse, so money was often tight in their household, especially with Emma's medical expenses. But William insisted on contributing to the trip, saying it would be his honor to help his granddaughter experience something that meant so much to her. The planning process became almost as exciting for Emma as the trip itself would be. She researched everything she could find about Buckingham Palace, the Queen's Guard, and the changing of the guard ceremony. She learned that the guards were real soldiers from elite regiments, not just ceremonial figures. She discovered that their famous red tunics were called scarlet, and that their bearskin hats were over 300 years old in design. Every piece of information she gathered made her more excited about the upcoming adventure. Emma's mother, Sarah, watched her daughter's enthusiasm with a mixture of joy and concern. She was thrilled to see Emma so passionate about something, but she worried about how her daughter might react if the experience didn't live up to her enormous expectations. Sarah had seen Emma disappointed before when her physical limitations prevented her from participating in activities with other children. The thought of her daughter's heart being broken by something she had anticipated for so long was almost unbearable. But David reassured his wife that this trip was different. This wasn't about Emma trying to fit in with other children or proving she could do something despite her wheelchair. This was about Emma connecting with something that truly spoke to her heart: the values of service, honor, and duty that her grandfather had instilled in her. David believed that Emma's genuine appreciation for these values would make the experience meaningful regardless of what actually happened during their visit. As the departure date approached, Emma's excitement reached fever pitch. She insisted, unpacking her own small suitcase, carefully selecting outfits for each day of their 3-day London adventure. She chose her favorite dress, a navy blue one with tiny Union Jack flags printed across the fabric. Her grandmother had given her this dress for her last birthday, and Emma considered it her most special piece of clothing. The night before they left for London, Emma could barely sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing, with thoughts of what she might see the next day. Would the guards really be as impressive in person as they appeared in all the pictures and videos she had studied? Would she be able to get close enough to see their faces? Would they notice her watching them with such admiration and respect? William came to say goodnight to his granddaughter and found her wide awake despite the late hour. He sat on the edge of her bed and took her small hand in his weathered one. "Tomorrow is going to be a very special day, Emma," he told her gently. "But remember, the most important thing isn't what you see. It's how you show your respect for those who serve. The guards will appreciate your understanding of what they represent, even if they can't show it while they're on duty." Nodded solemnly, understanding that her grandfather was teaching her something important about respect and recognition. She had learned from his stories that true soldiers didn't serve for praise or attention. They served because it was the right thing to do. Tomorrow, she would have the chance to witness that dedication firsthand and perhaps find a way to show her own appreciation for their service as. Emma finally drifted off to sleep that night. Her dreams were filled with images of proud soldiers in scarlet uniforms, standing guard over something precious and important. In her dreams, she was somehow part of that world of honor and duty, contributing her own small but meaningful piece to something much larger than herself. Tomorrow would be the beginning of an adventure that would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The morning sun streamed through Emma's bedroom window, waking her earlier than any alarm clock could have managed. She had been dreaming about soldiers marching in perfect formation, and for a moment she wasn't sure if the excitement bubbling in her chest was real or part of her dream. Then she remembered today was the day. Today, she would finally see the changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace. Emma's parents were already awake. Having heard their daughter moving around in her room before dawn, Sarah knocked gently on the door before entering, finding Emma already sitting up in bed with her navy blue dress laid out carefully beside her. "Good morning, sweetheart," Sarah said with a smile. "Are you ready for our big adventure?" "I've been ready for weeks, Mummy," Emma replied, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. She had planned every detail of this day in her mind, countless times, from what she would wear to where she hoped to position her wheelchair for the best view of the ceremony. Nothing could have prepared her family for the level of research and preparation Emma had put into this trip. The train journey from Manchester to London became an adventure in itself. Emma had never been on such a long train ride before, and she spent most of the trip pressed against the window watching the English countryside roll by. Her grandfather William sat beside her, occasionally pointing out landmarks and sharing stories from his own travels during his military service. The other passengers couldn't help but notice the young girl's infectious enthusiasm and the way she spoke knowledgeably about British military history. During the journey, Emma struck up conversations with several fellow passengers who were charmed by her intelligence and passion for her subject. An elderly gentleman named Mr. Thompson, who turned out to be a retired Royal Navy officer, spent nearly an hour discussing military traditions with Emma. He was amazed by her knowledge of ceremonial procedures and her genuine understanding of what military service meant. "Young lady," Mr. Thompson said as the train approached London, "I've met many people in my years, but I've rarely encountered someone your age with such a deep appreciation for service and duty. The guards you're going to see today would be honored to know that someone like you understands what they represent." His words filled Emma with pride and made her even more excited about the day ahead. When they arrived at London Euston Station, Emma was overwhelmed by the size and bustle of the city. The crowds of people, the tall buildings, and the constant noise created a sensory experience unlike anything she had encountered in Manchester. But rather than feeling intimidated, Emma felt energized by the excitement of being in the nation's capital, so close to the places where history was made every day. Their hotel was a modest but comfortable establishment near Hyde Park, a chosen specifically because it provided easy access to Buckingham Palace while being wheelchair accessible. Emma's parents had spent considerable time researching accommodations that would meet their daughter's needs without limiting her ability to fully experience the trip. Hotel staff, having been informed about their young guest's special interest in the royal guards, had prepared a welcome package, including books about the royal family and postcards of the changing of the guard ceremony. That afternoon, they took a preliminary visit to the area around Buckingham Palace so Emma could familiarize herself with the layout and plan the best spots for viewing the next day's ceremony. As they approached the famous gates, Emma fell completely silent, taking in the majesty of the palace and the significance of being so close to such an important place. The palace was more magnificent than Emma had imagined, even after studying countless photographs. The golden Victoria Memorial stood proudly in front of the palace, and Emma could see guards at their posts, standing with the perfect stillness she had read about in her books. Even from a distance, she could make out their scarlet tunics and towering bearskin hats. The reality of seeing them in person sent shivers of excitement down her spine. "Tomorrow, we'll get much closer," her father David promised, noting his daughter's wide-eyed wonder. "We'll make sure you have the best possible view of everything that happens." David had contacted the Palace Tourist Information Office weeks in advance, asking about accessibility arrangements for wheelchair users during the ceremony. He wanted to ensure that Emma's physical limitations wouldn't prevent her from fully enjoying this once-in-a-lifetime experience. That evening, the family enjoyed dinner at a traditional British pub near their hotel. Emma was too excited to eat much, but she enjoyed listening to her grandfather tell stories about his own visits to London during his military service. William had never seen the changing of the guard ceremony himself, making this trip special for him as well. The thought that he would experience this historic tradition alongside his beloved granddaughter filled him with joy. As they walked back to the hotel after dinner, Emma noticed everything about the London streets with intense curiosity. The red double-decker buses, the black taxicabs, the historic architecture, everything seemed to reinforce the sense that she was in a place where important things happened. She felt connected to the long history of British military tradition that she would witness the following day, back in their hotel room. Emma laid out her special dress one more time, making sure every detail was perfect. She polished her small black shoes until they gleamed, and she practiced the military salute her grandfather had taught her months earlier. William watched his granddaughter's careful preparations with deep emotion, recognizing in her the same attention to detail and respect for ceremony that he had learned during his own military training. "Emma," William said as she practiced her salute in the hotel mirror, "tomorrow, when you see those guards, remember that they're real soldiers doing an important job. They might not be able to acknowledge you while they're on duty, but that doesn't mean they don't appreciate respectful observers like you. Your understanding of what they do is a gift you're giving them, even if they can't say thank you." Emma nodded seriously, absorbing her grandfather's wisdom. She understood that the ceremony wasn't performed for the entertainment of tourists, but as part of an ancient tradition of protecting something important. Her role as an observer was to watch with respect and appreciation, not to expect acknowledgement or interaction. This understanding would make what happened the next day even more meaningful. As Emma finally settled into bed that night, she could hardly contain her excitement about the morning ahead. She had dreamed of this day for so long, and now it was less than 12 hours away. She whispered a little prayer of gratitude for her family who had made this trip possible, especially her grandfather, whose stories had inspired her love for military traditions. Tomorrow, she would see those traditions come to life before her very eyes, and she would be part of something much bigger and more important than herself. The morning of the ceremony dawned bright and clear, with London sunshine streaming through the hotel room windows like a golden blessing on Emma's special day. She had woken up naturally at 6 o'clock, 2 hours before her parents had planned. To rouse her, her internal excitement serving as the most effective alarm clock imaginable. Emma lay quietly in bed for a few minutes, listening to the gentle sounds of London waking up outside their window. Hardly believing that today was finally the day she had dreamed about for so long, Sarah found her daughter, already dressed in her special navy blue dress with the Union Jack pattern, sitting in her wheelchair by the window and watching the early morning activities on the street below. Emma had managed to dress herself completely, even braiding her long brown hair into a neat plait that hung down her back. She looked like a young lady ready for the most important appointment of her life. "My goodness, Emma," Sarah said with surprise and pride. "You look absolutely perfect. Did you sleep at all last night?" Emma's bright smile and sparkling eyes answered the question before she could speak. The anticipation had kept her awake for hours, but she felt more energetic and alert than she had ever felt in her life. Family enjoyed a quick breakfast at the hotel, though Emma was far too nervous and excited to eat more than a few bites of toast. Her grandfather, William, noticed her barely touching her food and sat down beside her wheelchair. "You need to eat something, my dear," he said gently. "Soldiers always make sure they're properly fueled before important missions, and today is your important mission to witness history in the making." Emma obediently finished her toast and drank some orange juice. Understanding that her grandfather was teaching her about discipline and preparation, these were lessons she had learned from his military stories. And applying them to her own experience made her feel more connected to the traditions she was about to witness. They arrived at Buckingham Palace 90 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, following advice from the Tourist Information Office about securing good viewing positions. Even at this early hour, crowds were already gathering along the palace gates and around the Victoria Memorial. Emma's father had brought a small folding chair for himself and her mother, planning to stand behind Emma's wheelchair so she would have an unobstructed view of everything as they found their spot near the palace gates. Emma was amazed by the diversity of the crowd that had gathered to witness the ceremony. There were families with children, elderly couples, tourists from countries around the world, and local Londoners who never tired of this spectacular tradition. The atmosphere was filled with anticipation and respect as people spoke in hushed, reverent tones about what they were about to witness. Emma positioned her wheelchair where she had the clearest possible view of the area where the ceremony would take place. From her research, she knew exactly what sequence of events to expect, but seeing the actual location where it would unfold filled her with awe. The golden gates, the red-coated sentries, all ready at their posts, and the magnificent palace facade created a scene that was even more impressive than any photograph could capture. While they waited, Emma became something of a celebrity among the other spectators. Her obvious knowledge about the ceremony and her articulate explanations of what would happen impressed the adults around her. A family from Japan asked her to explain the significance of the bearskin hats, and Emma launched into a detailed explanation about their history and symbolism that amazed everyone within hearing distance. "This young lady knows more about British military traditions than most British people," laughed an elderly woman from Scotland who had struck up a conversation with Emma's family. "Where did you learn so much about the Guards, sweetheart?" Proudly explained about her grandfather's military service and how his stories had inspired her love for military history and traditions. As the ceremony time approached, the atmosphere in the crowd became more focused and respectful. Emma noticed how people naturally quieted their conversations and began paying closer attention to the guards who were already visible at various points around the palace. She could see several guards in their magnificent scarlet tunics and towering bearskin hats, standing with the perfect stillness that she had read about in all her research. One guard in particular caught Emma's attention. He appeared to be younger than some of the others, perhaps in his early 20s, and he was positioned at a post where Emma could see his face clearly. Even from her distance, she could observe the concentration and dedication in his expression as he maintained his ceremonial pose. This guard seemed to embody everything Emma had learned about military service from her grandfather's stories. The sound of distant drums began to echo across the palace grounds. Signaling that the ceremony was about to begin, Emma felt her heart rate increase with excitement as she realized that the moment she had anticipated for months was finally arriving. The crowd around her fell completely silent, everyone straining to catch the first glimpses of the approaching guards who would participate in the changing ceremony. Then, like something from a magnificent dream, the guards appeared in formation. Emma watched with breathless fascination as they marched with perfect precision. their movements synchronized like the most beautiful dance she had ever seen. The sound of their boots on the pavement created a rhythm that seemed to match her own heartbeat, and the sight of their scarlet uniforms, blazing in the morning sunshine, was more spectacular than anything she had imagined. The ceremony unfolded, exactly as Emma had studied in her books. But witnessing it in person created an emotional impact that no amount of research could have prepared her for. She watched as the old guard was relieved by the new guard with movements that had been performed in virtually the same way for hundreds of years. The precision, the dignity, and the obvious pride of the soldiers filled Emma with a sense of connection to something much larger than herself. During the ceremony, Emma noticed that the young guard she had been observing maintained his perfect posture and concentration throughout the entire proceedings. She could see the dedication in his bearing and the pride he took in performing his duties correctly. This observation filled her with respect for the commitment these soldiers made to their service, standing in all weather conditions and maintaining their discipline regardless of distractions around them. As the main ceremony concluded and most of the guards marched away, Emma noticed that several guards remained at their posts around the palace, including the young soldier who had captured her attention. The crowd began to thin as people started to leave, but Emma asked her parents if they could stay a little longer. She wanted to observe the guards who remained on duty and perhaps find a way to show her appreciation for their service. Her grandfather understood immediately what Emma was thinking. He had seen the look of respect and determination in her eyes, the same expression she wore when she was planning something important. "What are you thinking about, Emma?" he asked gently, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Emma looked up at her grandfather with serious eyes that seemed much older than her 8 years. "Grandpa," she said quietly, "these guards are doing something really important, and most people just walk by without understanding what it means. I want them to know that at least one person here today truly appreciates their service." Her words revealed the depth of understanding and respect that her grandfather had helped nurture in her young heart. As the crowds began to disperse following the magnificent ceremony, Emma remained in her wheelchair near the palace gates, her eyes fixed on the young guard who had captured her attention. The guard, whose name was James Patterson, stood at his post with the unwavering stillness that marked a true professional soldier. At 23 years old, James had been serving as a member of the Queen's Guard for nearly 3 years, and he took immense pride in upholding the traditions and standards expected of someone in his position. James came from a military family in Yorkshire. His father had served in the Royal Marines, and his older brother was currently deployed with the Parachute Regiment. From childhood, James had understood the values of duty, honor, and service that defined military life. When he joined the Grenadier Guards, he had embraced not only the physical demands of military service, but also the ceremonial responsibilities that came with being part of such a prestigious unit. Standing guard at Buckingham Palace was both an honor and a test of discipline that James never took lightly. He had learned to maintain perfect composure regardless of weather conditions, tourist behavior, or personal discomfort. The ability to stand motionless for extended periods while remaining alert and professional was a skill that required months of training and years of practice to master completely. On this particular morning, James had noticed the young girl in the wheelchair from the moment she arrived with her family. Unlike many tourists who viewed the guards as living statues or photo opportunities, this child observed the ceremony with obvious respect and genuine understanding. James could see in her posture and attention that she grasped the significance of what she was witnessing, rather than treating it as mere entertainment. During his training, James had been taught to remain focused on his duties, while being peripherally aware of everything happening around him. This awareness was crucial for security reasons, but it also meant that he noticed when someone in the crowd showed particular interest or respect for the ceremony. The young girl's obvious knowledge and appreciation had not escaped his attention. Even as he maintained his required stillness and silence, Emma's parents, David and Sarah, watched their daughter with growing understanding of what she was contemplating. They had seen this look of determination in Emma's eyes before, usually when she was planning to do something that required courage despite her physical limitations. Sarah felt a mixture of pride and nervousness as she recognized her daughters intention to somehow acknowledge the guard's service in a meaningful way? "Emma, sweetheart," Sarah said gently, "what exactly are you thinking about doing?" She wanted to support her daughter's impulse to show respect. But she also worried about Emma putting herself in an awkward situation. If the guard was unable to respond due to his military obligations, Emma looked up at her mother with the serious expression she wore when discussing important matters. "Grandpa taught me that when you see someone serving their country, the proper thing to do is show them respect. That guard has been standing there perfectly still, doing his job even though people are taking pictures and making noise all around him. I think he deserves to know that someone understands how important his work is." William felt his chest swell with pride as he listened to his granddaughter articulate the values he had tried to instill in her through his stories and lessons. Emma had not only learned about military traditions from an academic perspective, but she had truly internalized the principles of honor and mutual respect that formed the foundation of military service. This understanding made her desire to salute the guard much more than a child's whim. It was a genuine expression of one person's respect for another's service. "Emma," William said, placing his weathered hand on her shoulder, "if you feel that this is the right thing to do, then you should trust that feeling. A proper military salute is never inappropriate when it comes from genuine respect. Just remember that the guard might not be able to respond while he's on duty, and that doesn't mean he doesn't appreciate your gesture?" Emma nodded solemnly, understanding that her action should be about expressing her own respect rather than expecting acknowledgement in return. She had learned from her grandfather's stories that true recognition between military people often happened without words or obvious gestures. Through shared understanding of common values and mutual respect for service, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. Emma maneuvered her wheelchair closer to the guard's position. She wanted to be near enough that he could clearly see her gesture, but not so close as to interfere with his duties or create a distraction that might put him in a difficult position with his superiors. Finding the right distance required careful consideration of both respect and protocol. James noticed the young girl approaching and felt a stirring of curiosity about her intentions. In his 3 years of ceremonial duty, he had learned to read the difference between tourists seeking photo opportunities and individuals showing genuine respect for the traditions he represented. Everything about this child's demeanor suggested she belonged to the latter category, which made James more attentive to whatever she might be planning. Emma positioned her wheelchair at what she judged to be an appropriate distance and angle from the guard's post. She wanted to ensure that her salute would be clearly visible to him, while not interfering with his field of vision or creating any security concerns. The careful thought she put into positioning herself demonstrated the respect and consideration that had motivated her decision to make this gesture. The few remaining tourists in the area began to notice what was happening, sensing that something significant was about to occur. Some moved closer to observe, while others respectfully maintained their distance, understanding intuitively that they were about to witness a moment that deserved to be honored rather than disrupted by flash photography or commentary. Emma's family positioned themselves where they could observe without interfering, each of them feeling the emotional weight of the moment that was about to unfold. David found himself thinking about all the challenges Emma had faced in her young life and how she had consistently found ways to focus on what she could contribute rather than dwelling on her limitations. This moment seemed to embody everything remarkable about his daughter's character and spirit. Sarah felt tears beginning to form in her eyes as she watched Emma prepare for what was clearly a very important moment in her young life. The careful way Emma straightened her posture and composed herself showed that she understood the significance of what she was about to do. This wasn't a child's impulsive action, but a thoughtful gesture from someone who had learned to appreciate the deeper meaning of military service and sacrifice. Emma raised her right hand slowly and deliberately to her forehead, forming the precise military salute that her grandfather had taught her during their Sunday afternoon lessons. Her back was as straight as her wheelchair would allow. Her shoulders were squared with pride, and her expression reflected the genuine respect and admiration she felt for the young soldier standing guard before her. The salute was textbook perfect in its form and unmistakably heartfelt in its intention. For several seconds, that felt like an eternity. Emma held her salute with unwavering precision. She looked directly at the guard with eyes that conveyed not only respect for his service, but recognition of the dedication and sacrifice that his duty represented. In that moment, Emma was not a disabled child seeking attention, but one human, being honoring another's commitment to service and duty. James Patterson felt his heart skip a beat as he witnessed the young girl's perfect military salute. In his 3 years of standing guard at Buckingham Palace, he had seen countless tourists attempt various forms of interaction, but nothing had ever moved him quite like this moment. The child's salute was not a casual gesture or an attempt to get his attention for a photograph. It was a genuine expression of respect that spoke directly to his soul as a soldier. The training James had received as a member of the Queen's Guard was explicit about maintaining discipline and avoiding interaction with the public while on duty. Guards were expected to remain motionless, silent, and focused on their ceremonial responsibilities regardless of what happened around them. Breaking these protocols could result in serious disciplinary action and potentially end a military career that James had worked years to build. But as James looked into Emma's eyes, he saw something that transcended the usual tourist interactions he encountered daily. Here was a child who clearly understood what his service meant, who had taken the time to learn proper military protocol, and who was offering him the highest form of respect that one person could show to another in uniform. The sincerity and dignity of her gesture created an emotional conflict between his duty to maintain protocol and his recognition of genuine respect. James could see Emma's family watching nervously from a few yards away, their expressions showing both pride in their daughter's gesture and concern about how it might be received. He noticed the elderly gentleman who appeared to be the girl's grandfather, standing with the bearing and dignity that James recognized as belonging to a fellow veteran. The grandfather's presence and obvious approval of Emma's action added another layer of significance to the moment. The few remaining tourists who had noticed what was happening began to gather at a respectful distance, sensing that they were witnessing something special. Unlike the usual crowd behaviors James encountered, these observers seemed to understand the gravity of the moment and maintained an appropriate, reverent silence. Their respectful attention made James more aware of the significance of how he chose to respond, for what felt like the longest minute of his life. James battled with the conflicting demands of military protocol and human emotion. Every aspect of his training told him to maintain his position and ignore the interaction. But everything in his heart as a fellow human being and soldier recognized that Emma's gesture deserved acknowledgement. The respect she was showing him was the same respect he hoped to earn through his service, and dismissing it felt like a betrayal of the values he had sworn to uphold. Emma continued to hold her salute with unwavering precision, her young arm beginning to tremble slightly from the sustained position, but her determination never wavering. James could see the concentration in her face and the genuine emotion behind her gesture. This was clearly one of the most important moments in her young life, and James realized that his response would either validate her understanding of military values or leave her feeling that her respect had been meaningless. The weight of the moment pressed down on James as he considered his options. He could maintain strict protocol and ignore Emma's salute, fulfilling his duty as a guard but potentially crushing the spirit of a child who clearly looked up to everything he represented. Alternatively, he could acknowledge her gesture and risk disciplinary action, but validate the respect and understanding she was showing for military service. As these thoughts raced through his mind, James remembered why he had chosen military service in the first place. It wasn't just about following orders or maintaining traditions. It was about serving something greater than himself and protecting the values that made service meaningful. Emma's salute represented those same values, and recognizing that seemed more important than any regulation about remaining motionless. In a moment of decision that came from his heart rather than his training manual, James made a choice that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. Slowly, and with the same precision that Emma had shown him, James returned her salute with a crisp, military-perfect acknowledgement that matched the respect she had shown him. The movement was deliberate and unmistakably intentional, leaving no doubt that James was consciously choosing to break protocol in order to honor Emma's gesture? His salute was textbook perfect in its execution, showing that this was not a casual or careless breach of discipline, but a conscious decision to prioritize human recognition over rigid adherence to rules. Emma's face lit up with a joy that was visible from across the courtyard. It's a validation of her gesture by a real soldier, someone she clearly admired and respected. Created a moment of pure happiness that transformed her entire being. For those few seconds, while they held their mutual salute, Emma felt truly seen and valued by someone whose opinion mattered more to her than almost anyone except her beloved grandfather. The small crowd that had gathered to witness this exchange drew collective gasps of surprise and emotion at James's unexpected response. Many had tears in their eyes as they recognized the significance of what they were seeing. A professional soldier choosing to honor a child's respect despite the potential consequences to his career. The moment transcended the typical tourist experience and became something genuinely moving and memorable. James held his salute for exactly the same duration that Emma maintained hers, showing equal respect for her gesture as she had shown for his service. When they both lowered their hands simultaneously, James took one small step forward and gave Emma a barely perceptible nod of acknowledgement, a gesture that said more than words could have conveyed about his appreciation for her understanding. In respect, Emma's parents were overwhelmed with emotion as they witnessed their daughter receive this validation from someone she clearly admired so much. David felt tears streaming down his face as he realized that this soldier had seen past Emma's wheelchair to recognize the strength of character and genuine respect she possessed.
Oh.
Sarah's hand covered her heart as she watched her daughter experience a moment of pure joy and validation. William, Emma's grandfather, stood with military bearing and tears of pride streaming down his weathered cheeks. As a veteran himself, he understood both the significance of James's decision to break protocol and the impact this moment would have on his granddaughter's life. He had spent years teaching Emma about military values and traditions, and seeing those lessons validated by an active-duty soldier filled him with indescribable pride. The moment seemed to stretch and contract simultaneously, lasting both forever, and an instant in the memories of everyone who witnessed it. For Emma, it represented the culmination of months of anticipation and years of learning about military service from her grandfather. For James, it was a reminder of why he had chosen to serve and the human connections that made that service meaningful. As the immediate intensity of the moment began to settle, James returned to his required position and bearing, but Emma could see in his eyes that something had changed between them. A connection had been made, a mutual respect established, and an understanding reached that transcended the usual boundaries between soldier and civilian, adult and child, able-bodied and disabled. Emma knew that she would remember this moment for the rest of her life, not just as the day she saw the changing of the guard, but as the day a soldier had seen her as worthy of the same respect she had shown him. This validation would become a foundation stone in her understanding of her own worth and potential, regardless of the physical challenges she faced. The impact of that extraordinary moment between Emma and James rippled outward like waves on a pond, touching the lives of everyone who witnessed it and many more who would hear about it in the days and weeks that followed. As Emma and her family prepared to leave Buckingham Palace that day, none of them could have imagined how profoundly this single interaction would change their lives and inspire countless others around the world. One of the tourists who had observed the exchange, businessman named Robert Chen, visiting from Singapore, had quietly recorded the moment on his mobile phone. Unlike many who might have shared such content immediately for social media attention, Robert was deeply moved by what he had witnessed and wanted to ensure that this beautiful display of mutual respect received the recognition it deserved. In a way that honored rather than exploited the participants, Robert approached Emma's family before they left the palace grounds, introducing himself and explaining that he had captured their daughter's interaction with the guard. "I hope you don't mind," he said to David and Sarah, "but what your daughter did today was something truly special. The respect she showed and the way that soldier honored her gesture, it's something the world needs to see. Would you be comfortable if I shared this, making sure to focus on the positive message about respect and understanding?" After discussing it as a family and getting Emma's enthusiastic consent, they agreed to let Robert share the video. Within hours of being posted online with a thoughtful caption explaining the context and significance of what had occurred, the video began spreading across social media platforms around the globe. The response was overwhelmingly positive, with people from dozens of countries commenting on the beauty of the mutual respect displayed by both Emma and James. The story was picked up by news organizations, first in the United Kingdom and then internationally. Rather than sensationalizing the moment, most media outlets treated it with the dignity it deserved, focusing on themes of respect, understanding across differences, and the power of human connection. Emma found herself being interviewed by journalists who were genuinely interested in her knowledge of military history and her perspective on what the interaction had meant to her. James Patterson, meanwhile, faced a different kind of attention. His commanding officers called him in for a meeting the day after the video went viral. James prepared himself for disciplinary action. Instead, he found himself facing officers who were more interested in understanding his decision-making process than punishing him for breaking protocol. "Patterson," said his commanding officer, Colonel Margaret Harrison, "your actions yesterday were technically a breach of standing orders. However, the context and the outcome have been noted at the highest levels. The respect you showed for that young girl and the positive representation of the Queen's Guard that resulted from your actions have been viewed favorably by senior leadership. While we cannot officially encourage breaking protocol, we recognize that sometimes the spirit of our service requires flexibility in applying the letter of our regulations." The conversation concluded with James receiving a formal commendation for demonstrating the values of the British Army through his compassionate response to Emma's gesture. Rather than ending his career, the incident enhanced his reputation within the military community and led to opportunities for him to participate in community outreach programs that connected military personnel with young people interested in service for Emma's family. The weeks following their London trip brought a flood of positive attention and opportunities they never could have anticipated. Letters and emails arrived from military personnel around the world, thanking Emma for her demonstration of respect and understanding. Veterans organizations invited her to participate in remembrance ceremonies, and schools requested her to speak about military history and the importance of honoring those who serve. Emma's grandfather, William, was perhaps the most profoundly affected by the response to his granddaughter's gesture. Seeing how her genuine respect for military service had touched so many people validated everything he had tried to teach her about honor, duty, and the importance of recognizing service in others. The pride he felt in Emma's character was matched by his amazement at how one simple gesture of respect had inspired so many others to reflect on their own attitudes toward military service and sacrifice. The story reached the attention of the British to lessen royal family through official channels, and Emma received a personal letter from Buckingham Palace acknowledging her demonstration of respect for the Queen's Guard and inviting her family to a special reception for young people who had shown exceptional understanding of military traditions. The letter, written on official palace stationery, became one of Emma's most treasured possessions. At the palace reception 6 months later, Emma had the opportunity to meet other children from around the Commonwealth who had demonstrated similar respect for military traditions in their own countries. She found herself in the role of mentor to younger children who shared her interest in military history, helping them understand the significance of ceremonies and traditions that connected their generation to centuries of service and sacrifice. The reception also provided Emma with a chance to meet James Patterson again, this time in a more relaxed setting where they could actually speak to each other. James told Emma how much her gesture had meant to him and how it had reminded him of the deeper purpose behind his service. Emma, now more confident and articulate after months of public speaking opportunities, shared with James her continued dreams of finding ways to serve her country despite her physical limitations. Their conversation led to James introducing Emma to military personnel who worked in various non-combat roles, including logistics, communications, intelligence analysis, and military history research. For the first time, Emma began to see concrete paths by which she might fulfill her dreams of military service, even from a wheelchair. These conversations planted seeds that would eventually grow into Emma's career path as she got older. The long-term impact of that moment at Buckingham Palace extended far beyond Emma and James's individual lives. The video and the story it told became part of training, materials used by military organizations to teach about the importance of community, relations, and the power of positive representation. Schools began using Emma's story as an example of how understanding and respect could bridge differences and create meaningful connections between people from different backgrounds and circumstances. Emma herself continued to grow into the values that her grandfather had instilled in her, but with a new confidence born from knowing that her respect and understanding were valued by others. She excelled in her studies, particularly in history and social sciences, and became a volunteer with organizations that supported veterans and military families. Her wheelchair never became less of a physical limitation, but it became even less of a barrier to her ability to contribute meaningfully to causes she cared about. As Emma entered her teenage years, she often reflected on that transformative day at Buckingham Palace. The moment when James returned her salute had given her something precious: the knowledge that she was seen not as a disabled child to be pitied, but as a person whose respect and understanding had value. This knowledge became the foundation for a life lived with purpose, dignity, and unshakable belief in her own worth and potential. The ripple effects of Emma's salute and James's response continued to spread, inspiring other acts of mutual respect and understanding around the world. Their story became proof that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simplest gestures, and that genuine respect between human beings has the power to transform not just individual lives, but entire communities and even nations. Years later, when Emma would tell the story to her own children, she would emphasize not just the moment of recognition she received, but the importance of showing respect and appreciation for others, regardless of whether that recognition is returned. The lesson she learned that day at Buckingham Palace: that genuine respect given freely enriches both the giver and the receiver, became a guiding principle that shaped her entire approach to life and her relationships with others.